My name is Trevor Buttram. I'm the Manager of Career Connections at the Insurance Institute of Canada, and welcome to Mission Critical, where we're exploring through a career roundtable the industry's response in the face of COVID-19. We're just going to give folks another minute, as I mentioned, just to get settled and to come through the door. Just give it a second, we will get going. It will be a fast-paced, high-energy session, and we're really looking forward to the conversation. Awesome. So we are going to get started because it's a jam-packed agenda. Again, just welcome to everyone who is joining us from across the country today to talk Mission Critical, the industry's response to COVID-19. It's going to be a career roundtable. I'm joined by Greg Markell, who is the President and CEO of Ridge Canada Cyber, and we're really excited to kind of hear your perspective. Erin Gattoni, VP of HR at CNA Canada, and Vinita Jajware, who's joining us from TIWA and the Toronto Insurance Women's Association, for those who are not from the GTA. So welcome. I'm going to turn things over to our panelists. They're going to kind of give you an overview of their career journey, highlights to date, as well a little bit about their perspective on what's emerged as critical in the face of COVID-19. So Erin, I'm going to kick things off with you. You are going to need to take yourself off of mute. There you go.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yeah, we're good to go.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. I'm super excited. I know I'm on a time limit from Trevor, so I will keep this short and sweet. As Trevor said, my name is Erin Gattoni, and I'm the Vice President of HR for the Canadian operation of CNA Insurance, working with a great team and broader insurance team at CNA. I'm a mom of 4-year-old twins, so if they do jump in during this, you will see my new colleagues in action. I'm also at home with my husband, who's also working from home. I started my career in insurance, like a lot of people, I kind of fell into it. I started as a trainee on the business side, working in commercial life sciences, which is my background at school. And I took a leap that is non-traditional with the guidance of some great mentors and jumped into HR. And really the method behind the madness of kind of how I think about my career is really that jungle gym mentality and drive to continuously learn. I'm a huge science nerd. I graduated from a science program, and I love to learn. And I always think back to what my dad told me when I was a kid, and he said, always put your hand up, Erin, and if it's not comfortable, that's a good thing. So I did that. I did that as part of my career, and the areas of the business I knew nothing about. I asked a lot of questions, and ultimately people like to talk about themselves and what they do. So that worked out well. And I've held roles such as HR consultant, HR manager for Bermuda operation, talent and development, both globally and locally, leadership program facilitator, coach, mentee, mentor, colleague, and most importantly, the friend. There's multiple paths in insurance that I think you can create for yourself and really drive your career. And someone a few weeks ago told me that they started in HR because HR was usually brought into a change or strategy change very early on in the process. And that kind of hit home with me. It's not, I like to work with people. It's a more strategic function as we move forward. And I strive to continually be part of that change and be a change agent to help drive the business forward and be part of a plan. And currently I'm helping to manage our internal pandemic response within Canada and as part of our global team across the world, along with the next stages of stabilization during the pandemic and what happens next. And in HR, change is especially right now with so many unknowns. You have to constantly be at the top of your game, and you must manage change with really that high degree of communication and transparency and collaboration. And I personally hold myself to very high standards. And while we never thought we would be in this situation come 2020, I can honestly say that I've learned so much about myself, our leadership team, empathy, sticking to values, and I feel fortunate not only to be in the position that I am, but also with a focus on people, on the people side of the business and within insurance. So I'm excited to be here with you today to talk through it. Thanks, Trevor.
Thanks so much, Erin. And you raised some really great points just around sort of your career journey, being one where it's about sticking your hand up and saying yes to opportunity, but also really appreciated sort of the context around the people, the values, the things that we need to think about at our core as we move through something like a pandemic, the core elements of what make an organization go, as well as the value of sort of that strategy partner, recognizing that in operations, we're not alone, that we can reach out to, human resources, our IT, our functions, that give us the support that we need to drive our business forward, and that they're always there and a part of the decision making that really evolves insurance, even if they don't necessarily have that traditional role of underwriter, broker, or adjuster, that there's value in all of the career paths coming together at this point in time to drive us forward. Greg, I'm going to invite you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your career path to date as well.
Sure, thanks, Trevor. Erin, that puts your hand up, even and especially when it makes you uncomfortable. That's awesome. That's great advice. Similarly, I mean, I think I have a few people to thank for, ending up where I have, and who knows where this is going to take me over the number of years. But I think that's just a bit of a testament to how unique and really cool the career path within insurance can be. It's you can end up basically wherever you see yourself and following your passion. And I will keep my pen down because I didn't realize I was going to have that in the camera. But I started my career on the underwriting side. I was very fortunate to have a mentor guide me through and guide me into insurance when he was a broker, and when he realized that I wasn't very keen on moving back to Eastern Ontario after university. He helped guide me through and help navigate some of the job interviews. So I was very fortunate to start with some expertise. And ultimately, I settled on the underwriting side. So I went through a career training program with a large Canadian insurance company. And I think one of the foundational elements to it that really helped me sort of give my career a boost, and I'm not just plugging the Institute on this one because I actually believe that it's entirely true, is I fast-tracked through the CIP, and then I continued to fast-track through the FCIP afterwards. So the designation has helped give a big career boost, I think. So that was one thing. But I lasted about 3 years on the underwriting side before I wound up at a national brokerage firm, focusing on full specialty lines, so directors and officers, errors and omissions. I came out of school with a finance background, at a business school, so it was really where I wanted to and where I saw myself going. Left that firm as a partner in 2014 and became the national cyber leader of one of the largest brokerages in Canada. It wasn't national to start, but it quickly became an expanded national role. So I gave up a book of business to really be a resource to colleagues. And you know what, it was one of the best experiences I think I've had, just working with all different people from all different areas of within a large international brokerage. So very fortunate there. And then sort of the person that I used to work with, well, I say for, he says with, approached me to start up Ridge Canada. And this has been, honestly, the entrepreneurial element of things has been an itch that I've wanted to scratch for a long time. And it's been a wonderful journey down this specialized road. So.
Awesome. Thanks, Greg. And I think you highlighted to us that your career can also be something that you need just to be conscious of, like those, you called it an itch, right? That you need to scratch, and that when the opportunity presents itself, that you have the opportunity to kind of navigate and change the direction that you want to go, to kind of match what those motivators are and what's keeping you engaged and what's keeping you excited, right? And that insurance provides the opportunity to do that. Vinita, wanted to hear from your perspective. You're joining us in front of some pretty exciting equipment. That is live, that is not a Zoom background.
No, I love that that was the start of our few minutes of prep, because it really kind of culminates on why insurance is just the greatest career option for any professional, young and old. Insurance touches absolutely everything. So whether it's this pen right here that went through a complex manufacturing and supply chain environment, or this very exciting piece of heavy industrial equipment that is responsible for things like mining infrastructure, transportation infrastructure, and in some other countries, a lot cooler things than just that. Insurance touches everything in the world, and that's where I was very fortunate in my career to accidentally fall into insurance and really step into a career path in risk management that I absolutely fell in love with. So a little bit about me. I am a graduate from the University of Guelph, 2008 grad. So for all of us new career entrants here, I know exactly how you feel. Graduating in the time of a pandemic is no different than graduating at the time of a significant market crash and really wondering, how am I going to find my way forward in my career? Well, for me, I was fortunate that even though at the ripe old age of 23, I was coming into the industry, I had come into the industry with tremendous extracurriculars, involved with the York Region District School Board, with OSSSA and YRPC, and starting my own leadership organizations. And that involvement and engagement allowed me to excel in my university career, then find my way forward and accidentally into insurance, where I eventually ended up as the VP of Operations and Business Development for a consulting engineering organization. And this consulting engineering organization was unique. I was hired to actually rebrand the company as they navigated a purchase and sale. And I launched something called the Technical Services Division, which was very much focused on leveraging my claims and forensic experience in power systems and really utilizing that in a commissioning, testing, and construction space. As I navigated insurance, I decided, hey, I really like these people. They have a lot of drinks on occasion and sure know how to have fun. But there were some of the brightest people in the industry I had ever met, whether it was Erin or Greg or any of the people that I was involved with conferences and working groups. I knew this was the industry for me and that I wanted to find my place here. So from there, I took my Chartered Risk Management designation through the University of Toronto, earned my CRM through the Global Risk Management Institute, and furthered my education at Osgoode Hall Law School by actually earning my certificate in construction law. Following my certificate in construction law and after being elected president of TIWA in 2016, I thought, you know what, it's time I earn my CIP and actually deserve some of these credentials behind my name. So I actually even decided to take my CIP in 2018 or 19. And even now, as I'm navigating complex energy risk, liability risk, and construction risk, while I might be pursuing more specialized designations, my heart and my experience really does go back to what would traditionally be called loss control engineering or equipment breakdown. And that's just a little bit about me, Trevor.
Thanks, Vinita. And I think what's great is that it's clear that learning never stops within the sector, right? It's one mode to kind of continue to propel your career forward, and that you can assimilate, acquire information, both formally and informally by the sounds of it, in terms of like you've been able to find really great colleagues and trusted advisors, but also been able to leverage the formal education piece to give you sort of that living library, if you will, of knowledge that you can continue to draw upon at any point in time to be able to propel your career forward. Greg also talked about the power of, mentors and people saying yes and giving you kind of the confidence to move forward in some of your career pathways. So great way to kind of set the tone and launch us into really our first kind of segment, where I wanted to talk to you about insurance emerging as essential. We've always talked about how it's a part of everything that we do in life and in business, but really in the age of a pandemic, I think we can all agree that our essential service status feels a little heightened at this point in time. What does this mean for the business of insurance? What are some of the emerging products, roles of technology, and what does this mean for the industry? So what's emerging is critical. Greg, I'll turn things over to you first.
Sure. Well, I've sort of bet the farm on cyber being essential. So hopefully I'm right. But I think one of the things that we're learning throughout this pandemic is just, the evolution of the way people work and how this is changed over time. The reliance on networks, the reliance on people within your supply chain. I think there is not an industry that is out there right now that has not been impacted in some way, shape, or form. And a lot of industries are turning to insurance. Now, at the same time, I mean, Erin, Vinita, and I have talked about, some of the negative press and publicity that potentially comes with it, but I think you're gonna have that no matter what. The essential part of insurance is that I'm not going to reiterate anything that Vinita or Erin's have already expressed in the fact that it really does touch everything. I've looked at carving out a space for myself and my business on a very narrow, like razor's edge type of coverage. So that it does have broad reaching impacts and directly impacts financial stability amongst a number of different industry verticals, sectors, everything. And frankly, one of the biggest, when I was a broker, one of the biggest sales tactics to get past that, I don't have a cyber risk, was, okay, well, do you work with a computer? So, I mean, just about every industry is impacted by it now. And similarly, insurance, it's not something that you can see or touch or do, or you hope you don't have to use it every day either. So it is just, it can be whatever you make of it. So it's a very, very fascinating, and again, just to echo everybody else's comments, you can never stop learning. There's such an opportunity. I've been doing research on robotics in manufacturing and the integration of artificial intelligence and process automation, robotic process automation, and how that impacts different industries. So that's just an example of some of the nerding out that I do on a regular basis across a ton of different industries. So if there's a passion play that you think you have, and I would just suggest that make sure people know about it. Don't be afraid to talk about it. It's everybody has talents, and I think it's about bringing them to the forefront, especially in times like these. So that would be my 2 cents.
I think just to build off of what Greg said, I remember sending out the corporate Canadian email about insurance being deemed as essential in a lot of the different provinces that we operate. And with speaking with employees there, it was so interesting. They're so proud to be part of an industry that's deemed to be essential, because this is not something that we've ever gone through before. And in Canada, we're very fortunate, as many insurers and brokers, and as Greg talked about, we were able to flex and really transition that work from home fairly easy. There's always bumps in the roads and things that we go through, but that's not the same in all industries. And even looking at the article that came out from StatsCan, in April alone, close to 2 million Canadians lost their jobs. And we work in an industry that ultimately tries to make people whole and be there for our insureds and our customers, but also I think a lot about the communities that we live in. And Business Insurance did an article about a month ago that should honestly make us all proud to be part of an industry that's not only agile to deal with change, but also helping to advise clients as they're changing operations or handling idle properties or how they can protect their business during this time. And our industry, both from a broker and an insurer perspective, are really there to help and advise and ensure that our customers and our insurers are mitigating risk during an already tough time. And that's top of mind, both from a people side and a business side. And I think it's been incredibly inspiring just to see how much the industry has given back to communities. And Greg had talked about kind of some of the negative press that's come through, but just seeing how the industry has come together, from assisting policyholders during this time of hardship to donating funds to those in need through food banks and support of small business and buying local and the Red Cross and donating PPE and coming together, even at virtual events that we're so used to having in person, like the Relay for Life through WIC and support of the Canadian Cancer Foundation. We're doing it virtually as an industry and as an industry that strives to help those in need. And it's been so apparent that that's how we've come together during this time. It honestly makes me so proud to be part of an industry that does that. And though we all compete on a regular basis, and that's what we do, in these times, we've seen so much collaboration and so much coming together as an industry to help support those in need. So it's been a really interesting time of change, but I think we all should be proud of the industry that we work for.
So a couple of points, Erin, that you touched on that were so critical, and Greg, building off of your point as well around subject matter expertise. I think it's the age of subject matter experts within our industry, whether it's in cyber, life sciences, becoming, risk management. Vinita, I don't want to steal your thunder. I'll let you lead it there. But it's really interesting to kind of see all of that emerge. The other is the people element. It's a people-driven business. It is to be there for people when they need us the most, and to be able to respond and to have pride in that, I think is key. Career Connections has been profiling some of that, and it's been really heartening from sort of an outside perspective to take that whole industry and be able to promote all of the really great things that we're seeing and doing. So pivotal right now, and I think offers people hope in the age of an essential service for sure. Vinita, your perspective.
If I could just build on Greg and Erin's fantastic points, I think you also hit the nail on the head, Trevor. It's response and it's communication. And if I consider the last 12 years of my career, whether it's the fact that I'm designated as a chartered risk manager, or frankly, whether it's the fact that I'm certified as a marketing communications specialist by the Canadian Marketing Association, those are the two areas that really run close to my heart. And much to Erin and Greg's point, essentially we're in a renaissance within insurance where we're truly coming back to basics, back to what the promise of insurance is. And there are case studies on this. If we think about Lemonade when it launched out of the US, and how millennials were driven towards this idea that insurance is fundamentally based on indemnity and a deeper cause. Insurance can't be disconnected from communities because it touches everything that lives and breathes. And the one point that I will say I absolutely agree with Erin is that when I similar to Greg, I operate in the most narrow lane of insurance when it comes to forensics. In fact, there's so many forensic firms that are emerging, it's kind of hilarious. But within that narrow lane, for the most of us, who I like to refer to it as not a jungle gym, but a sandbox, for us who play nice in the sandbox, we're actually colleagues and we're not competitors. And when we're colleagues instead of competitors, we come from a place of empathy and understanding that the important work in pursuing forensic science and understanding origin and cause and wanting to actually find the way forward for a claim so that an insurer can reserve the risk, indemnify the insured, and get it off their balance sheet, well, that's win-win for everyone. But to drive back to the initial question, Trevor, what I would say is there's so many unsung heroes in the mission critical space. And while rightfully so, we should be celebrating our healthcare heroes because they are for certain our frontline workers, there are those that get missed in the supply chain. So whether it's that TTC or Metrolinx driver or the grocery store retail clerk, or, you know, thankfully the person who's selling us some wine so we can relax with the family after we've had an intense day working from home. I mean, I'm very fortunate. My husband and I are actually both in mission critical careers, as my husband works for broadcast media. And let me tell you, if I didn't have a husband who worked for broadcast media and accessibility, I certainly wouldn't have been able to facilitate a cool backdrop like this. But beyond that, I actually have been in the front lines silently working in healthcare spaces, in transportation spaces, areas, road spaces, areas of construction, and areas of healthcare that were deemed essential once COVID hit, because regardless of the pandemic, we all had to risk our lives, don the appropriate PPE to ensure that progress was not sacrificed as a result of this pandemic. So whether that means you had to walk back into a news studio to ensure that at this important and essential time the news was heard and understood, as is the case for my husband, or whether it's me, where I have to don 16 layers of PPE, face visors, 3 different types of masks. In fact, if it wasn't for my friends who I was on site with today supporting me and this initiative, I really don't know that I would have been able to have a cool backdrop. I probably would have been sitting in a hole in a tunnel somewhere, you know, commissioning a different job and hoping that I had enough cell service to participate. So mission critical careers look like anything you want it to be if it's touching the realm of insurance, because insurance unites us all.
Yeah, and oh, sorry, Trevor, if you wouldn't mind, I think Erin, you mentioned too that the home life aspect, right, when you started working, and Vinita, just to add to that too, it's so critically important. I mean, I'm so very fortunate. I count my blessings every day. One, that, you know, we're in Canada and the response and the buy-in has in general been very, very good amidst this whole thing. People are tending to take a very pragmatic approach to things, but more so, I count my blessings every day that I've got someone that's so supportive at home. You know, going through a global pandemic, and like Vinita, I started my career in the during the financial crisis. I started a year earlier in 2007, so I had a lot of friends that were, you know, without jobs pretty quickly.
Don't tell me when I took a victory lap, Greg.
No problem. But just like these stressful times, I think everybody feels the stress, and I mean, it's having someone to be able to talk to it about at home every night, who's also working throughout all of this, and as an entrepreneur, just having that support network has been very, very important to me, just from a mental health perspective, as well as just, you know, keeping the drive alive. Like, you know, we
Absolutely. I think having partners, having, you know, relationships that we can drive on, people who we can reach out to in our network of support, whether they're with us in our quarantine or whether they're colleagues who we happen, or friends or family members who happen to be our career cheerleaders, right? And be able to give us the opportunity to build us up, which is my segue into our next question, just to keep us moving. What have been the greatest influencers on your career to date? Who has sort of been your personal and professional champion? How has that development helped to shape your career pathway? Vinita, we'll start with you.
I have too long a list to name. We could do a scrolling credits, but what I will say is this. Within the insurance industry, the Toronto Insurance Women's Association was almost like a safe baby pool for me. And that as I navigated my new role in helping with rebranding an organization that's now 50 years old and transitioning management and ownership, TIWA for me was that safe place to network and to learn and understand the business of insurance. So much so that when I took the C11 course, it really reframed some perspective. But if I were to name names, I would say within the insurance industry, Eileen Green was instrumental to me as a personal and professional mentor to this day or night, she's still a sounding board and a voice of reason if I'm in crisis or if I'm in celebration. Strong women in the industry are bountiful, but as are many, many allies, which are found in men in our industry as well. I was very fortunate that I'm in two male-dominated industries, whether you look at the technical aspect of insurance with an equipment breakdown, or whether you look at my day-to-day life in construction. And within the construction space, I was blessed to have excellent mentors within my company who really showed me a way forward in developing a technical understanding. Similar to Erin, I actually started my career or my academic career in pure sciences. I told my parents from the age of 4, your little girl's going to be a doctor and nothing's going to stop me. And it wasn't until I had my first taste of entrepreneurship in high school where I decided, much to the dismay of my folks, that I wasn't going to be that doctor and I was going to go into business, or rather business school, that things really shifted focus for me and I found a different path. But I didn't find my way forward in my professional life until I found insurance. And whether that's a peer mentor within your organization or a colleague, or whether that's a reach mentor within the industry, because there are tons. I mean, even beyond the work with TIWA, Erin and I sit on the Lloyd's of London Dive-In Committee, celebrating diversity and inclusion. And that in and of itself has spoken so much to my soul of what our industry and frankly, what the world needs more of, that the opportunities are endless. But I would be remiss if I didn't say a word of thanks to my biggest cheerleader, backbone, and support. And for me, it's my partner at home. That's what makes the machine work, whether it's a machine this big or a tiny little LED light bulb. But the person who helps me move things forward and finding my way is definitely my partner at home.
Yeah, I think it's so wonderful when we can recognize all facets of those career cheerleaders, as well as the power of a professional association. Many of those on the call today are from Young Insurance Professionals of Toronto, Young Insurance Professionals of BC, or Young Insurance Professionals of Ottawa, and have had that kind of body of experience, or the opportunity to connect with one another and learn from each other. And as you alluded to in your previous answer, not just as competitors, but also as colleagues, and coming together as an industry, we can solve a lot of sort of the challenges, problems, instances of occurrence that we encounter better together. Or Greg, rather, I'd love to hear sort of your perspective.
Sure. So I think I've given 2 already, just in my better half at home, and being fortunate about getting walked around to all of my interviews by a now retired broker when I first got into the industry. So Brendan Hunt was instrumental, and but also again, I think my you get up, not to make this into an awards show or anything, but my dad, like it's I get a lot of my work ethic from my parents, and my dad started his own accounting practice. So, I got a taste of the entrepreneurial spirit at a young age. But I think to zero in on the question about career cheerleaders, I've been very blessed to have a few. I think my first manager out of at Lombard when I worked, she actually encouraged me to apply for what I was passionate about, which was the financial services portion of things, even though it meant that she was losing me as an employee. So Linda McConnell was definitely one of my early career cheerleaders, and I feel very fortunate to have been put into her group right out of the training program. Some of the trainees that I started with, I mean, you need your emotional support being locked in a windowless conference room for 6 months. So that, like, they know who they are. But I would say, what I had, to echo Vinita's point, I worked with Eileen and some of the partners over at the brokerage that Eileen works at, and they were instrumental. And the partnership group that I have now, I would say my investors and my shareholders who I got to know when I was at Jones Brown and really developed those relationships with, they were the ones that took a chance on me and hired me originally, and then sent me across the pond to the Lloyd's of London training program, where I was the first Canadian in 25 years to go to it. And to this day, some of the folks that were retired, they're no longer retired.
Yeah.
They've bet on us, and they're a constant source of support, and frankly, some of the most intelligent people that I've met in my entire life.
And Greg, that's fantastic that you've had sort of influencers and folks who have said yes. It also sounds like that throughout the course of your career that you've taken time to reflect on sort of the opportunities, the advice, the interactions that you've had, and how they've also shaped experiences. They give you a done list, right? And that done list is something that you can continue to leverage no matter where your role takes you. And those supporters are equally important to continue to draw on. Erin, I'm going to give you a quick opportunity to weigh in on this question. I'm very conscious of time, but didn't want to lose your insight as an HR professional around sort of key influencers and experiences that shape career.
Yeah, I think similar to Greg and Vinita, I've really had a number of great influencers, and they range from sponsors who continually put my name in the ring or help me move into a new position and ensure I got a legitimate spot. I think mentors are a big part of the learning stories, talking through big ideas, continually having them work really hand in hand and gaining experience for them. There's so many different ways to think of those people in your life, both career professionals and personally. And I think coaches, of which I turn to two of them, very different in their own way. And you need people within and outside of your organization that you can count on. I come from a competitive sport background, so coaches have been a big part of my life personally. And they help to give you that pep talk. And when you don't see that flicker of light anymore, and those managers, I'm not going to name people because I haven't really given them the heads up, but there's been a distinct few people who have, a number of people who have really held those spots of sponsors and mentors and coaches. And I think it's so important as you move through your career to define who those people are and stay engaged with them throughout your journey. And it's really a two-way street. And I've found the most impactful decisions and ideas and career moves I've made with their guidance and thoughts and perspective, and they challenge you in a different way. And I think those can be both personal relationships and professional relationships, but it's really important to define who those people are and that they each hold different roles in their own sense.
Absolutely. I think it's about being mindful of who those people are.
Yeah.
So sometimes we feel like, oh, there's no one in my network. I don't have anybody who's championing me. I don't have sort of the right, circumstance. You don't want this conversation to come off as I was in the right place at the right time and the right person was there to give me my career. It's actually the fact your career isn't something that's done to you. It's something that you are a key contributor to and are a part of. And, you needed to make the most of those interactions as much as those people had faith in you. You needed to say yes to the opportunity and be mindful of what was actually happening around you. And also making your own luck. We talk about social happenstance, and it's really important that you identify the influencers, the movers and shakers, the people who are saying or expressing interest in the same things you are, and being able to capitalize on that, getting yourselves in front of the right people so that championing process can happen. So putting yourself in the right situations to be able to create your own right place, right time moment. I wanted to talk a little bit about skills and competencies. So things that have emerged at the forefront. And I'm going to give each of you a minute to kind of just weigh in here with what do you think are sort of the top, if you needed to choose three, what are the top three competencies that you think would serve people well during this time, as well as just over their career and work-life health? Things that they should hone. Vinita, we'll start with you.
Oh, you caught me off guard there, Trevor. I have two for sure, but I know my friends Greg and Erin will pick this up. I would say adaptability to the unknown and being comfortable and familiar with the unknown. In order to thrive in those circumstances, in my experience leading people and teams, you really have to have a great deal of self-awareness and frankly, empathy. And if there's anything that this post-COVID-19 reality has set the framework for, it's the fact that no 2 days are the same, whether you're working in the mines or you're working in a hospital. And that adaptability or that mental agility is truly, truly imperative to frame your way forward in success. And that's really it. My second point was agility. And agility is really, like, much to Erin's background, I also played a lot of sports, including soccer, up until I was going to university. And that ability to have discipline and focus is truly the way that you can find both your headspace at work and your calm at home. And those are my 2 cents. Did I make it on time, Trevor?
You sure did. That was great. Erin.
Yeah, I think definitely agility was one of mine that Vinita said. Resilience and continuous learning are big for me. And I revert back to a quote from Neil Pasricha, not just because he's a fellow Queen's grad and an amazing author, but I saw him speak at U of T, and one of his quotes is something that I think about all the time regarding resilience. And it's that what he says is that ability to see the tiny sliver of light between the door and the door frame after you've heard the door click close. And I think resilience is really what keeps us going. And I find people use the can't or I'm not a lot. And Neil talked a lot about, and what he taught me is that you have to put that ... yet at the end. And if we think 10, 5, 2 years ago, the industry looked very different, and there weren't the products, there weren't the things that we've gotten into even within the last year. So if you continue to tell yourself that I'm not innovative or I can't be external facing, we should really replace that with I'm not innovative ... yet. And I can't be external facing yet, because it's that drive to continuously learn that will keep us relevant, and it'll keep us thriving within the industry. And I think pushing those that continue to push and continue to learn will really be the most successful in my eyes. And I think a lot of the time, and the staff hear me say this all the time, this is really a time to focus on your development and crafting your own personal and professional goals and sharing them with your influencers. And we honestly spend more time planning our vacations, not now, maybe not now, but hopefully you're doing vacations in your backyard, but then we do planning our own careers. And that's something where your career is a huge part of your life. And when you don't take the time and truly take the time to focus on yourself and your goals and how your organizations can support you achieving those, I think it's a loss of some great things that can come about.
It's a great plug for that career ownership piece, Erin. I'm a career practitioner by designation. It's music to my ears when people talk about owning your career and knowing that you can influence and shape it based on sort of that ... yet, that growth mindset, right?
Yeah.
Greg,
yeah.
Your thoughts on sort of skills, competencies, what's coming to the forefront for you?
Yeah, it's tough to go last when Erin and Vinita just got everything, which is I loved the empathy, resilience. We talk resilience not just with people but with clients all day, every day. We look for resilient organizations when we underwrite, so resiliency is a really important one for me. But I think the biggest one that comes to my mind is passion. I'm looking for people that are passionate about what gets them up in the morning. You know, what motivates people to be the best that they can be, and that recognizing that is going to be different for every single person. I mean, I'm fortunate that I've got a team now that we're all rowing in the same direction. We're all passionate about cyber, but there's also other passions within that those people's interests too. So being able to support and drive and look to get the most out of people from driving through their passions is a really important one. And then ethics comes down to it. You know, we're in an industry that there's you deal with money, you deal with people, you deal with, you know, regulatory bodies, you deal with a ton of different things. So I look for people with a strong moral compass. And if you just try to be the best that you can be and follow the golden rule, I think it'll take you a long way in your career.
Absolutely. I think that, you know, as we talk about things like passion and ownership and, you know, agility and adaptability, without sort of that ethics and doing these things with integrity, I think you lose some of the career value, right? You lose out on opportunity if you're not viewed as somebody who follows through, who does their due diligence, who is capable of asking really great questions and has the hard conversations when we are in an area of gray, right? As opposed to just seizing the dollar that happens to be there right now, or seizing that client, or what have you. So I think those are all really great points, and I thank you all for sharing those. What I wanted to sort of do now is I'm going to invite those who are on the line with us today. Please, if you've got a burning question, let's throw it into the chat box, and we'll wind up with that open-ended piece. Please let us know sort of what's on your mind. And the other that I guess I just wanted to, as folks are doing that, kind of just hear from you on is you're really kind of in a spot where now, as you've evolved in your career, you have some perspective, you have some knowledge, you have some things that are kind of, you know, now in niche areas of the business, you're feeling like a specialist. What would you have told sort of your earlier career self? What are some of the things, the pieces of advice, tips for success, or kind of core elements that you think, what's that one nugget that I might want somebody to take away today?
If I may, and it kind of hit the point that I forgot earlier, I think the summary of all that Greg and I are really sharing, it's find your purpose, find your why. And if you always stay true to your guiding star and your true north, then no matter what that career is, whether it's an insurance or you're part of the supply chain of insurance, or you're an entrepreneur, you're always going to be driven to that goal and that objective. And if I think of the somewhat manic trajectory of my career, and if I could go back to my 13-year-old or 15-year-old self, I'd say, calm down and find your why. Find your why first and foremost.
I think that's really great advice, is like what actually is at the core of this motivation, and what kind of problems do I want to solve? What kind of things do I want to be known for? And
What's my purpose?
How can I put that forward? That's great. Erin, your perspective.
Yeah, I think I really liked what Greg said in finding your passion and talking about passion, because I think wherever you look in insurance, whether it's claims or underwriting or the different niche areas that have insurance, whatever you're passionate about, more than likely has to be insured. So the great part about our industry is that you can really find what you're passionate about, like Greg did with technology and cyber. And when you're doing something that you're passionate about and that aligns with your strengths and that really hits home with you, I think that's where you're most successful and where you'll have that innovative thinking and that resilience and that agility and all of those things that go into loving what you do, because we spend more time at work than we do in any other part of our life. And if you don't enjoy what you're doing, it's a tough place to be. So find your passion and figure out what that is, and that self-awareness that I think Vinita brought up is important, and it all comes around to that focus on yourself and really taking that time to learn and write those goals down, write those development plans down to get where you want to be, and find those influencers or those people to help you in that exposure.
So making the plan and executing the plan, I think, are also really critical parts of the process, right? If we spend too much time in ideation, we actually don't get to the point where we're following through. So Greg, quickly, your perspective. I've got some questions rolling in and I want to make sure I get to those.
Sure. For me, it would be keep moving your feet. you know, it's sorry for a bad sports analogy, but I certainly won't ever be the prettiest, so I have to outwork everyone. It's just, you know, keep going, keep driving forward, and you know, there's a lot of bumps in the road. It's more about you and how you overcome them than anything else, and so, you know, just keep at it. That's it, and keep working hard. I mean, that was always my MO.
It goes back to that resilience piece, right? In terms of recognizing that failure does not necessarily equal a lack of success if you can learn something, right? If you can continue to acquire new pieces of information. If something didn't go according to plan, what do you do differently next time? And how do you continue to kind of bounce back and use that information to your strategic advantage?
Trevor, failure is so important. I've actually built a career around it. So I would say if our industry stopped learning from our failures, whether it's from personal self-reflection or as an industry and understanding how and what we insured and why this wasn't a good bet as a risk, we would stand to do far more damage than good. So failure is very, very important. It's
paramount to sort of success going forward. Greg, I have a question for you. How do you think that the market will look after the pandemic?
It's a great question. So we were strapping in for a bumpy ride before the pandemic. You know, you look at some of the indicators into market hardening, and they were all moving that way. I nerded out at the beginning of March and started mapping net changes to the industry, like the change in net written premium, which is the #1 indicator of soft or hard markets. And I mapped it against the overnight Fed interest rate, and the two curves actually follow each other to a T back from 1975 until 2019 when they started to diverge. So insurers are making less money in negative interest rate environments, and on top of that, underwriting losses are piling up due to catastrophic loss events, and liquidity through the industry is also challenged. You see a bit of capitalization moving across in the form of some of the different measures and different products like in insurance-linked securities, but I don't think it's enough to prop up what was eventually going to be a very extended hardening cycle. So I think we're in for a bit of a rough go for the next couple of years. That said, you know, like we just talked about, this is a massive industry, and certain industries are going to thrive and others are going to be challenged coming out of COVID. So I think it's a matter of, you know, I look at it, and again, what I would have told my 21, 22-year-old self is keep moving your feet, keep working hard, and you know, looking at that resiliency factor that we've talked about, I think is important.
And reimagining and repurposing skill set, you know, to find those opportunities and to see where you might be able to make a contribution if your area of the market or your area of specialty may not necessarily be thriving in the minute. How might you be able to take that step sideways or say yes to a different kind of opportunity to be able to drive your career forward?
Well, interestingly, just very quickly, if we look at some of the biggest fears that have gripped every industry for the last little while, you know, process automation and robotics and advanced next-gen manufacturing. When robotics was first introduced by the car manufacturers in the 60s, it actually resulted in an increase in jobs. So I think that agility that Vinita and Erin just mentioned and being able to continue to follow your passion while looking at where change is going to go and where things are going to end up. The Walter Gretzky analogy, go where the puck is going to be. You know, I think you'd be very well served in looking at how you see things coming out and where you can focus.
Kind of the future forward conversation and having that eye kind of on market trends as well. And also the real deal, right? Understanding that new technology or new shifts in the market doesn't necessarily equal elimination of positions. It could actually create huge new opportunities, which leads into the next question. And Erin, I think that you might be best suited to field first. And then Vinita and Greg, if you have anything to weigh in on, it would be great. Any insight or thoughts on new or major changes in insurance roles as we drive?
Yeah, I think Greg touched on this a little bit, is that as we move through this time and as we continue to experience what we're in, keeping your feet moving and continuing to learn on what is the newest industry trend or what is the newest product or thing that's coming out. I think Vinita had said it before, Lemonade never used to exist, and the things that they can do now from an insurance perspective kind of disrupts the industry a little bit or adds that next level. So I think from a position perspective, in the last little while, we've been looking at data scientists, we've been looking more at technology with the way work is moving forward. So those have always been hot careers. I think if you look at career sites right now, there's a lot of those positions open in insurance companies. But it's, as we talked about, if you look back every year, something new has emerged. And whether it's been a new product or it's been a new service or something, that's where the jobs are coming from. So when you think about an underwriter continually has to keep up with what the industry is doing or what's happening or what's coming out, what's new. So it may not be about completely new positions. It'll be about new focus and new areas to explore and continuing with that growth mindset.
Absolutely, and you're right. I think the industry was poised for disruption. 5 years ago, we were talking about it in 2017, 18, 19 as coming to fruition. I think in the age of 2020, we've just accelerated that timeline significantly. New realities, new risks, new opportunities emerging each and every day. Vinita, anything to add just as a closing thought point?
Yes, I mean, you said acceleration, and in my fire origin and cause space, that would be like throwing gasoline on something, and that's really what COVID's done. But I mean, I love the analogy of the idea that this is, your career is not a marathon. Sometimes it's okay to run in place and to take note and take lesson. And while Erin was absolutely right, my opinion, I agree with her that those are very good future forward career objectives. But in my purview, I really consider the traditional career options, like what will the broker of tomorrow look like and what will the loss control engineer of tomorrow look like? And in my opinion, as a risk manager of a very small organization, my broker is my trusted risk advisor. It is not a commoditized service. He understands the intricacies of my business and truly allows me to take significant risks and to be able to put myself in a situation where I'm working with cool machinery like what's behind me. So I would say that to keep it from a traditional perspective, to play devil's advocate here, that traditional roles in insurance will be reimagined as we come out of COVID-19, if not for anything but pure necessity. And for those young and aspiring early career professionals, just remember, while it might not seem very good, and Erin, Greg and I have admitted we're all millennials, or zennials rather, as I call us, sometimes you got to run in place to know when you get to sprint forward. And that's how you find your way forward in your career. At least that's been the case for me.
I think that's a really great...
I fully agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You mean you can't be CEO tomorrow, Erin?
I was thinking in a week, but
I think that's
some of those lateral moves as organizations get flatter, those lateral moves create a more solid foundation than the historical climb up the ladder.
Yeah, that's right. It's not linear anymore. It's now that everything's becoming flat.
Yeah, we talk a lot about it in career development theory, if I can nerd out with Greg for a second, as career being a lattice. And so it expands and contracts sort of on a plane as opposed to necessarily needing to have that curve upwards or that trajectory that we've necessarily thought of as in the traditional sense. So I think there's so much that you've been able to bring to the conversation today. I want to thank you for your time, your energy, your insights. I think, you know, we covered a lot of territory in terms of, you know, career cheerleaders, influencers, taking advantage and making the most of every opportunity that you're presented with in your career and seeing how it can be learned from and capitalized on to drive your career in the direction you want to go. We also talked about that notion of career ownership and that notion that you are in the driver's seat and that there are cheerleaders who help you along the way, but ultimately it's up to you to steer the car. And we just feel so excited to know that it's also a world of opportunity right now within the insurance industry to think about how we might reimagine and how we might be able to redefine our roles, even if the market is looking adverse, how we might be able to just continue to drive us forward so that we remain the essential, vital, stable, and rewarding industry that we are. Thanks to all. If you'd like to leave us a comment on how you found this session, just give us a thumbs up. Tell us your thoughts, perspective, or even just to say thank you. We are so glad that you joined us today and hope that this session was beneficial. Thanks so much.